The nation's 118th Congress was sworn in 2 weeks ago, a slight majority transferring the gavel from longtime Speaker Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat from California, to Republican Kevin McCarthy, also from California. We welcome back our first guest, South Carolina Congressman James Clyburn, former Majority Whip and now Assistant Democratic Leader. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
First, I must ask you, any words of wisdom for the new Majority Whip, Tom Emmer?
No, I think that we all have our different styles of leadership. It's very clear that the current speaker will be different from the past speaker. And I suspect that the current Majority Whip will be a little bit different from the last Majority Whip. And we all pursue our passions in the way that we think would be satisfactory to our constituents, and then we see where the chips fall.
All right. As an Assistant Democratic Leader, can you please share what that role entails and what your plans are for year 2023?
Well, my plan is simply to assist the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, in carrying out his duties and responsibilities to our caucus and to our constituents. I think that people tend not to focus on the fact that when you are a member of Congress and you're in leadership, you have two sets of voters that you must be concerned about. Number one, you have to be concerned about your constituents, the people who sent you to Congress in the first place. And number two, you're concerned about your caucus, the members who elect you to leadership. And if you can't be a member of Congress, you can't be a member of leadership. And you have to keep that in mind. And so there's going to be an inside-outside game. Hakeem Jeffries is much more of a policy guy than I am. I hope to be able to complement his leadership by being the outside guy that I have always been. As you may have seen, within the last several days, he has issued a press release indicating that I am going to be his liaison with the faith community. I grew up in a parsonage. I honed my leadership skills at a Methodist high school before ever going off to South Carolina State. And I have a very strong relationship with the faith community, a strong relationship with the HBCUs, more than 100 of them across the country. I'm a 33rd degree Prince Hall Mason, and I'm a member of the Divine Nine. All of these are groups that are very critical to carrying out the wishes of our caucus in the African American community, and that's where I'll be concentrating most of my efforts.
And if I can also ask you, on what issues do you foresee working across the aisle with Republicans as we move forward on various issues such as the border, such as drugs pouring in over our border and other issues that are affecting Americans, the economy as another example?
Well, I don't see the border as being central to the future of this country. We are a nation of immigrants, and I would wish that all the people who are the products of immigration, the sons and daughters, grandsons and grandsons of immigrants, would have the same sensitivity for current day immigrants as the past leadership in this country has had for those immigrants. Now, some of these immigrants came here by choice, others came here against their will. These things must be reconciled. And I think that we are not doing justice to our country if we cannot understand that. And that's where our problem is. A lot of people are being forced to leave their countries because of all kinds of issues current. Not all that unlike those issues that forced Europeans to these shores way back several centuries ago. So these issues are not central. What is central, in my opinion, is maintaining the good faith and credit of the United States of America. So number one has to be the debt limit, which I don't think should be. I've been advocating for 30 years now that we ought to get rid of this whole thing about legislating the debt limit. All you do is raise it every time it needs to be raised. It doesn't need to be there at all. We're the only country of our status that's got such a thing. And I think it is nothing but ruinous to our economy, and we ought to get rid of it. But since it's here, we should do it in a bipartisan way, as we have always done, and make sure that we don't jeopardize good faith and credit of the United States of America.
I do have a couple more questions for you, sir. So we're going to take a break here, and when we come back, I want to ask what your thoughts are. Should President Biden run for a second term? What your influence will be here in South Carolina. So we're going to do that in just 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're joined by Congressman Jim Clyburn. You're joining us from, it looks like, Washington.
No, I'm in Columbia.
Are you in Columbia now?
Office.
Okay, very good. Well, being
in fact, those swords up there from the Citadel.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Well, being in South Carolina, you had incredible influence as Majority Whip in getting President Biden nominated here in South Carolina. And I'm curious now, as Assistant Democratic Leader, what your influence is going to be should President Biden decide to run for the presidency once again.
Well, certainly if he decides to run again, I am going to be all in support of him. I think he's demonstrated that he's deserving of re-election. All you've got to do is go back through the last 2 years and see who brought us back from the worst health care crisis we've had in this country for more than a century. COVID-19 was something that the previous administration fumbled the ball on. And this president has brought us out of that, reopening schools, getting businesses unshuttered, and getting people back to work. This is very, very important.
If I recall correctly, though, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if I do recall, I believe President Trump was against the shuttering of schools and businesses. So that was sort of a forced issue, and then everyone shut down, and now things have reopened.
There's one thing to be against it. It's something else to get it done. You can be against something. Yes, he was against the shuttering of schools, but the schools got shuttered. He was against businesses closing, but the businesses got closed. So the question is, what do you do? Just because you say something doesn't make it true. And if there's anything we know about the past president, we should know that he lies and lies and lies. And it has no relationship to the truth. So the fact of the matter is, he said that we were going to he fixed the infrastructure. Charleston ought to be jumping up and down about this president. This president, when he was vice president, is the one that got the money to deepen the Charleston Harbor that makes us so effective in the business world up and down the East Coast and across the country.
Speaking of infrastructure, speaking of which, South Carolina, it's fallen way behind in infrastructure. It needs a lot of help just in terms of our roads, not to mention our technological infrastructure as well. So I'm curious, coming from your office, what plans are in improving said infrastructure?
Well, several weeks ago, the governor of South Carolina, who is the biggest supporter of Trump that you can find, he stood at a press conference and told this state and this world that but for Jim Clyburn, I would not be standing here to announce that we are going to build out 100% of infrastructure of broadband in South Carolina. That was infrastructure that yours truly made sure that got put in the bill, $65 billion. So when you look at the roads and bridges that are being constructed all over South Carolina, the money is there. What we have to do, the states have to provide the leadership to get it done. So to his credit, McMaster is doing what needs to be done, and certainly these roads didn't get all messed up overnight, so you aren't going to fix them overnight.
Yeah.
But the money is there, and thanks to McMaster, he's providing a good leadership to get us to where we need to be.
Sir, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Representative Jim Clyburn from South Carolina, thank you once again.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're back after this.